where else would you rather be than right here, right now?
Hey UK Bills Mafia, this is Christian Wade of your Buffalo Bills. This is the Red, White and Buffalo Blues, a UK Bills podcast with your hosts, Matt and Alex. Let's go Buffalo! Woo!
Welcome to another episode of the Red, White and Buffalo Blues, a UK Bills podcast. Bills news with a UK twist. I am Matt. This is Alex.
Hello.
Alex, how you been?
Oh, I'm good. Great. I just got back from Buffalo. A friend of ours got married, so I am now sitting in my 14-day quarantine. I think it's day 3 or 4. Maybe it's day 12. I don't know. I'm losing my mind. I think I've literally pulled all of my hair out. So yeah, I'm enjoying this. And you know, the crazy thing is, in like 3 weeks, my brother gets married, so I'm going back to Buffalo. Was really looking forward to seeing a Bills game while I was there. His wedding's on a Friday. I was going to go to the Bills game on Sunday, but they announced that there won't be any fans for the first 2 home games. So that kind of sucks. Sorry, Evan listens to this. I can't wait for your wedding. It's going to be great. But yeah, just, you know, in parentheses, darn it, I wish I was going to a Bills game.
So you better quickly get onto the airline and actually make sure that cancelled ticket doesn't get cancelled then.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's just gonna remove me from the wedding party, and I'm not gonna get an invite at all now.
Oh dear, families, you gotta love them. But on this episode, as I say, we're UK Bills. We're talking all things Buffalo Bills. We have Matt Parrino on the show talking about training camp. But before we go into that, talk a little bit about that, just want to quickly, most of you are probably up to date, but want to keep you up to date anyway with a bit of transactions that happened in the last few days on Justin Zimmer and Tanzel Smart, a couple of defensive linemen that actually come in to add depth. Friday, they've signed cornerback Brian Allen, formerly of Seattle and Pittsburgh. And probably the biggest news on there would be the release of Hauschka and not such a surprise, a release of Lachlan Edwards, leaving Tyler Bass, the rookie 6th round pick, as our team's kicker going forward.
Great. Let's make that all the kicker talk that we do for the rest of the season.
Oh, you know you love the kicker talk. I really wanted a Puntapalooza, as is it Joe Buscaglia? Was it Joe Buscaglia that said that? Or someone said it. Chat. I really wanted that in special teams, but you're probably dancing a merry jig right now, aren't you?
Yeah, there's literally no part of me that wants to do research on punters or kickers anymore. I don't. Kicker is more important. It absolutely is, especially since they moved the extra point back. It's important to get a guy who's accurate. And Hauschka missed one in training camp the other day, so I think that's what locked Bass in. We talk about that with Matt Parrino in the interview.
Yeah. So, as I say, we had Matt Parrino on the show, and he was actually we always have great interviews with him. Obviously, this year we're talking about training camp in a completely different environment to previous years, where fans can go in, reporters can go anywhere, news crews can go anywhere and record anything. But now, in this COVID period, that everything's changed, and we get great insight from Matt on what that is like, and also what is to come, and who's looking good, and all that from training camp.
Yeah, I mean, I feel really caught up, and I feel like I really have my finger on the pulse of what this team is doing. You know, he eliminated a lot of fears and doubts about team chemistry because of the COVID situation. We're talking about how Allen and Diggs are connecting. We're talking about how the rookies are integrating. Pretty much every doubt that I had about this team not gelling because of the COVID setbacks. Matt is talking about how everything kind of just fits together. So
Yeah.
before I explain everything that we talk about, let's let's take you to the interview.
Yes, so sit back and enjoy as we speak to Matt Parrino on the training camp. Enjoy. And we are joined on the Red, White, and Buffalo Blues by Matt Parrino. Matt, thank you very much for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
First of all, obviously, training camp is very interesting this year. I just want to know, obviously, from your point of view, how different is it from obviously when you get the crowds in when they're at Saint when they're obviously in Rochester?
Yeah, it's a little bit different just from the sense of where we're allowed to go. Usually during a training camp in Fisher, and even when training camp shifts back to Buffalo, we're able to kind of go anywhere we want on the perimeter of the fields, and so we can kind of pick our vantage points. Now there's 2 fields at the complex, and we're kind of along the back, the closest end zones to the parking lot, and we can only go up and down that area, and that's for the pool reporters. For the rest of the media, they're only allowed to go like a designated area in the middle of the 2 fields, and really they don't have as much ability to move around. So it's just tough from that perspective. And obviously without fans, the team has been able to, and multiple teams around the league, taking advantage of the ability to kind of crack down on what's allowed to be reported. So it makes our job a little bit more difficult. And you don't think too much about it because we are so used to discussing all this stuff. But like I've noticed a few times that I've had to really catch myself before referencing something that I'm not allowed to reference. And it's just, so from that perspective, it's been really difficult. I'm, as much as I wanted training camp to be here, because this is a year with as good as this roster is, I wanted to dive into these battles and really, but not being able to talk about it, I'm almost kind of looking forward to the 53-man being set and us moving on to the season.
Yeah.
So you're saying you might not be able to answer any of our questions today.
I mean, I think I can answer some, and I think that, we've kind of, obviously it's been kind of a learning process, and I think we've learned some things, and the Bills have posted some things. I mean,
right.
They posted a video the other day that I tweeted about, and it clearly shows who was playing right guard and right tackle.
Yeah.
So, you got to just look for your little nuggets where you can find them. And I can talk about who I think has been playing well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, obviously the first question we're going to I want to ask is obviously the fan favorite here in the UK and friend of the show and the guy who does our intro, Christian Wade. Obviously being a little bit further down, obviously with Singletary and Moss getting the majority of them. What has Wade actually shown in there, and does he have a route to it, or is it going to be another international practice squad slot for him?
I don't ever want to be a bummer, but unfortunately, he just hasn't gotten the opportunity this camp. I mean, first of all, before he got injured about a week ago, so he's been out. When they had the scrimmage on Thursday, he wasn't available. He's got a quad that he's dealing with, so that never helps. But he's behind not only the 2 guys you mentioned, but TJ Yeldon, who I think by all accounts within the organization, he's a dependable veteran that can do a little bit of everything. And the thing that's really tough for Christian is, even if somehow he carved out a spot on a special teams unit for himself, even if he did that, he still has to make sure that if he's called upon to be a running back, that he can execute all of the things. How is his ball control? Like, we haven't seen it in a bigger sample size. Can he pass protect? That's an area that Zach Moss has already been kind of applauded by Sean McDermott already this camp for his ability to that he's shown in training camp to be able to block. And that's a huge deal. And that's one of the reasons I think that Devin Singletary wasn't featured more early on last year, because it took him a little while to get comfortable in that aspect of things. And for Christian, as good as he has been, considering he's only started learning the game 18 months ago, it's still a lot to expect. And I think that because you have those 2 years to kind of keep him in your program without it affecting the team and kind of have him learning, the more time he gets to learn the game, before he has to be thrown to the wolves, if you will, I think is better. So yeah, I think you're looking at another year of the path or the exempt spot on the practice squad, and I think that's a good thing. And I think next year, I can't wait for camp next year in a way, because I think that's when the Christian Wade watch really begins.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't helped. Obviously, with COVID and all that they haven't really got the preseason games or anything like that actually can have a little bit more game practice rather than just obviously training camp and run the drills.
Say that again. Sorry, you broke up there.
It's a shame that with COVID and all that he actually he hasn't had or can't get into that game situation where he's actually in a live game rather than a scrimmage or just training camp
for sure
itself.
Yeah, for sure. This whole situation has been costly for a lot of those depth guys. I mean, even looking at a guy like Nick Easley, who I think the Bills really, really like, and a guy that they probably even think has the potential to replace Cole Beasley long term. I mean, that's the high end of expectations, of course. Super quick, great route runner, gets separation. And just for a guy like that, you had to shrink the rosters from 90 to 80. And he was obviously a casualty because of that. And then you don't have a practice or preseason games to evaluate a lot of these guys. So, guys like Vashawn Joseph, who is coming off of a year where he was injured, former 5th-round pick, to not have those games to be able to really dive into how far he's come. It's tough. And they already have tape on Corey Thompson. Like, if they need a reliable backup linebacker, they already know what they'll get out of him. So it's tougher for guys like Vashawn Joseph, Tyrell Dotson, all these guys, these undrafted or, guys that even like draft picks like Dane Jackson, who I think is going to benefit from the fact that Josh Norman looks like he's going to be out a bit. But to your point, yeah, it's just a bummer that they're going to miss out on those opportunities to evaluate these guys.
Yeah.
Well, that really leads us into our next point perfectly.
Okay.
So we're talking about the challenges this offseason. So talking about the new guys like Diggs and the rookies, how are they acclimating compared to what could be compared to a normal offseason? I mean, is there any reason to worry about chemistry not fully being built?
I don't anticipate that, just because of, the culture that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane and, all throughout his coaching staff has really cultivated here. Like, when guys get in this room, like they're immediately embraced. It's really amazing to see. I mean, I think we just saw, and it's tougher this year for me to see that because I'm not in the locker room. But
yeah,
you saw that video. I think it was yesterday or the day before of, I think it was Josh Allen who posted somebody posted a little video of Stephon Diggs and Isaiah McKenzie going at it, just talking about video games or something. And those kinds of things, like, you got to be comfortable to be able to do that. And, we've seen Stephon Diggs pretty animated on the practice field. He seems comfortable. Like, they just do a really great job, and Sean has talked about it year after year, of onboarding their new players and relying on their, player-driven leadership. That's the cliche that Sean always talks about, but it's true. Like, these guys, the guys in the locker room that he entrusts to be the leaders and be the guys that kind of spread his message, they get guys on board and up to speed pretty quickly. And I think that the biggest question I have is the on-field dynamic between Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. Is that going to be where it needs to be for them to be successful early on? All indications from last Tuesday were that everything is going swimmingly to this point. I mean, Stephon Diggs, I think, was targeted 10 times and he had 9 catches. And, again, it's practice. It's against your own defense. But that's significant to me. Like, I think that's something that's a confidence builder, that I think that for a lot of teams around the league that have new pieces, this is an offense that's mostly intact, and all that they're adding, is potentially a new stopgap right guard, whatever that ends up being, to replace Feliciano, and one of the best wide receivers in the game. And you don't become one of the best wide receivers in the game if you can't produce in different situations. We've seen Stephon Diggs produce with different quarterbacks, with different systems in Minnesota. So I anticipate it's going to be more of the same. And I think that they studied what Stephon Diggs does well and how that can lead to success for Josh Allen. And so
Yeah.
my anticipation, until it's proven wrong, is that is going to be a match made in heaven, and Diggs is going to do big things for this offense.
Yeah, I
Good to
mean,
hear.
obviously, I read somewhere a while back that both Gabriel Davis and Isaiah Hodges have actually really been into that playbook, and they've actually been teaching. They've acclimatized well to that, and obviously, we can see with Gabriel Davis himself how the way he's performed in training camp, and they've even been helping the veterans actually a little bit more. I'm sure, if I read that correctly, about a few weeks back. So to me, it's showing that they're really liking what they've actually got, what we've got at wide receiver, and how the team unity really has shone through this whole difficult situation we're in the world.
Yeah, and speaking of a difficult situation, looking ahead at next year's salary cap potentially dropping by 20 million. I mean, that puts Brandon Beane in a really tough spot as he tries to re-sign a guy like Matt Milano, who's probably going to cost upwards of 13 million a season. He's going to have some work to do, and you got to start looking around the roster and like, where can you start to save money? And Gabriel Davis could be the key to maybe moving on from John Brown, who's going to be 32, I believe, next year. And listen, this offense might just absolutely explode, and Diggs Brown might be one of the most feared receiving combos in the league. Then you're in a situation where you don't have that option, to move on from a John Brown who becomes that important to your offense. And he's already important to your offense. But in trying times, you have to start figuring out, can we get by with a younger player who's on a much more advantageous salary? Those are the questions you'll have to start to ask yourself, because with Diggs, Beasley, and Brown, I'm pretty sure they got close to 40 million, in salary next year just with the three of them. That's a big chunk of the pot. So it'll be interesting to see like how they manage all of that in these tough times. But Gabriel Davis, I think one thing I will say, Sean McDermott joked like he thinks that John Brown was just being a little complimentary of Gabriel Davis and Isaiah Hodgins. He's not sure if that's necessarily the case where they're actually teaching some of the veterans. But, I think what you can say is they both have really studied up and taken full advantage of the virtual offseason to get themselves in a position to be ready to go. Like how many times have you seen or read about rookie wide receivers that come in and have stars in their eyes and trying to figure things out at a super fast pace, like Dawson Knox. He talked about how last year he didn't even really know what he was doing until the later part of the season, and that's true for a lot of the guys. Gabriel Davis, there doesn't seem like a moment on the practice field where he doesn't have an idea of what he's supposed to be doing, where he's supposed to be going, and that's just a big part of the battle of getting these guys ready to play. And so I think Gabriel Davis could be a part of this offense. I think he could get meaningful snaps in 2020. And he's also insurance that if anybody gets dinged up, you don't have to worry about it because you can just plug him in pretty much anywhere.
Exactly. Obviously, we saw from the scrimmage last week that obviously everyone's reporting that Josh Allen's actually finally threw over 300 yards. Okay, some people are saying it's against the second team defense and all that, but is there anything new from training camp and all that from Josh Allen to show that he could be he could now become a better statistical passer to silence the doubters? Because I saw that one throw to Andre Holmes, they actually just threaded it right through the needle in coverage.
Yeah, so you were wrong on both accounts there. It was Andre Roberts.
Yeah,
you were going to receivers pass there, sir. You were going down the gamut of Andres. No, it was a really good throw. I thought from the scrimmage, Josh was just pretty dialed in and effective. You know what I mean? Not every throw was beautiful. Not every throw was like, throwing guys open and hitting the mark. And there's a few balls where I noted that Cole Beasley had to react and adjust. And So, yeah, I think all of that is good, but we have to see it in the games. And there were big chunks of time last year where I thought that my biggest complaint about Josh was that he would just go away for periods of time where I felt like the offense almost like fell dormant, and there was a lot of 3-and-outs and inconsistent plays, and he needs to just be more whatever it is that led to that. He needs to be more focused. He needs to be more dialed in. And he needs to make sure that this offense is on schedule and moving the ball consistently. And I think that'll help the defense too. And I also think that the offense is going to be helped by, better field position. I think that this defense is even better than it was a year ago. Probably more turnovers. I expect that to be the case. Whenever you improve your pass rush, which I think that this team is going to be a better pass rushing team as a whole, that usually leads to more turnovers. So, yeah, I think Josh has been good so far. Nothing spectacular, but nothing bad, really. A couple bad throws by here or there, but, that's to be expected considering this is the first time these guys are all getting together and playing these last 3 weeks since Houston. So
Exactly. I mean, it's... Carry on, Alex.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say, because in connection to Josh Allen, his success is so strongly tied to the offensive line, and that was a major area of focus last year. I think that most people grade them out as middle of the pack, low middle of the pack. If their performance stays the same, because there wasn't any real big changes, can this offense take the next step?
Yeah, I think that you can. I think that they were strong last year, but I also think that one of the reasons that maybe they struggled at times was just the fact that 4 new starters on a unit of 5. It's usually going to take some time for you guys to build some chemistry and know, like, offensive line. If you talk to coaching staff, on the O-line, wherever you're at, they talk a lot about, like, how it's important that all 5 guys determine the success from play to play, more so than any other position group. So I think from that perspective, not adding somebody just might be thinking, or they added Darrell Williams, who I think is a significant add, by the way. Like, I don't think he gets enough credit, or Brandon doesn't get enough credit for that signing. This is a former All-Pro that if he can kind of find his form again, and we saw last year, like, Trent Murphy is a guy that's gotten a lot of flack by this fan base and even in the media. And when the Houston game came and they were going up against one of the most potent offenses in the league, Trent Murphy showed up. I mean, he was a terror on that day. And this is a guy that took a long time to rebuild after a catastrophic injury, and it looked like he wasn't the same. I think Darrell Williams almost fits into that category now. He's 2 years removed from the leg issues, and he played all right last year, not great, but Carolina also moved him all over the place. I mean, he played left guard, left tackle, right guard, right tackle. That's a lot of work and listen, you want position flexibility. Brian Dable talked about it on Friday. Like, that's why they're still working on all these offensive line combos on the right side. But that's craziness. 4 positions for a guy that has all-pro chops on his resume from 2017. Exactly. And I think that they see him more of a right side kind of guy. I think that's where his best football has been. And so whether it be, I can't give away any where he's playing, but either of those spots, wherever he ends up playing, I think he can considerably be an upgrade over, whoever that is the case. Maybe Cody Ford from last year, right tackle. I still think Ty Nsekhe, man, like, every time I see him out there, he's still playing really well. So I think it's going to be hard to keep him on the bench. And I always think that the cool thing about Nsekhe is, because of his age and his struggle to stay healthy, you can always platoon him and just take advantage of, if it's 30 snaps, 40 snaps, 60 snaps, whatever it ends up being on a given day, he gives you good snaps. So I think the continuity there, understanding, like, what we have and how to work with the rotation that we have. And so another year, if it ends up being Cody Ford and Ty at right tackle again, they went through that last year. They're going to be much more comfortable in that scenario this year. So, we'll see. There's still all these different, who's been really good on the O-line? Ryan Bates, man. people don't talk enough about that guy. I mean, I
Yeah.
think he's an absolute lock to make the roster. He's got so much
Really?
flexibility. He can play center. He can play both tackle spots. He can probably play some guard if you need him to. He's really good, and so they have some real good depth on the O-line. I think that's what allowed them to move on from Spencer Long, who obviously was contemplating retirement as he only lasted a couple days at San Francisco before calling it a career.
Yeah.
They got some nice pieces. And this Evan Bain is another guy who's looked really strong and dependable as a guy that's got some position flex as well. So I think the offensive line is going to be better this year, even without any dramatic, big, high marquee money additions. But yeah, if they're better, that could mean better things for Josh Allen in this offense.
Exactly, and you've also got. It's also good that they've locked now with Deion Dawkins' contract extension. They've locked down that left side for at least the next 2-3 years or so. So it's now them just Bean and McDermott just working on that right side, finding that right combination for at least 2 years of potentially really good solid O-line work.
For sure. And really, you mentioned the left side and the center. That might be the most important position, and they got that lined up for the next 3 years. And so, I think the cool thing about the guys that they target, and we saw it with Feliciano last year, they have a guy in Bobby Johnson who coaches the O-line that really does a good job of scouting, the league and finding out people that can come in and kind of fit the kind of versatile roles that they kind of covet. And so it could also be a situation where they keep kind of just, going out there every year and finding a Feliciano and a Spain one year, and then a Williams and a Bame the next year. And they go out next year and find other guys and keep going until you find that perfect combination. But I'd also like to see, the Bills didn't draft any offensive linemen this year. And it's actually probably a good thing, because this is a year where I think that a lot of offensive linemen, rookie linemen, are going to struggle because of the lack of the, spring workout program.
Yeah.
Like missing rookie minicamp and OTAs, that's just absolute bedlam for rookies, and especially on the lines. So I think that, I'll be interested to see, depending on where they draft next year, if they don't go and take another swing at a tackle. If they think the long-term future for Cody Ford is at right guard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we talked about the depth on the O-line. Another big point of focus at training camp is the depth at wide receiver. And I think that the new practice squad rules play a role in who we keep and who we don't. First, just in case anybody isn't fresh on the practice squad rules, can you briefly explain the changes?
Yeah, so the practice squad's going from 10 players to 16 players. And what a cool little caveat that was added after the new collective bargaining agreement was finished in March was that this year, moving forward, teams were going to get 2 practice squad spots that have no restrictions on how many years a guy's been in the league or how many games he's played. So you can legitimately say Jerry Hughes, you could cut him, and if nobody signs him, you can put him on your practice squad because there's no in one of those 2 spots. Well, what they did with COVID is they added 4 more of those spots. So now 16 players, 6 of those players have no restrictions. So that really opens things up to a host of different type of players and options. I mean, you look at the backup quarterback's position. If Jake Fromm's a guy that you have enough confidence in based on this training camp, and I don't think Jake's been great, to be honest with you. I think he's been just fine, and nothing's really stood out. But say that they do believe in him and they think they want him to be the backup. Well, you can maybe cut Matt Barkley and have a kind of an agreement with him that he comes back on your practice squad and becomes available to you if you need him, because there's no restriction. So, and then week to week, how it works is you get down to 53 players on Saturday, so in 6 days. Then game week, after a game, everybody is eligible on your practice squad to be signed until Tuesday at 4:00, and that's when rosters are kind of protected, or those 4 spots that are protected. So if you say you have Duke Williams that ends up landing on your practice squad, and you really want to protect him, and nobody signs him after he's cut to get down to 53, you can then protect him every week in hopes of locking him up if you want to, protect against injuries. But the thing about that is that once you get to the game and you play the game, then all players are free, and you get a day there each week where you can sign anybody you want off the practice squad. So it's going to be tough to navigate that. I mean, Brandon talked about the difficulty of in this year, like signing guys off of practice squad just because of the requirements to get them in your building and up to how are you going to be able to get them in the environment quick enough to have them impact things before, a game on a Sunday? It's tough to say. So I think that, the biggest takeaways are that they're just expanded and you just have a lot more room to work with here, Pasture 53.
And they can easily come up and play a game and go back down, right? So, I'm thinking with that, we might keep Robert Foster and Duke Williams, 2 fan favorites, possibly all year, because I think a lot of the conversation was, at wide receiver, who will they cut? Maybe no one?
So, no, they'll cut. I mean...
but go to the practice squad, right?
Okay, right. Yeah, I definitely think that they'd be willing to bring back Isaiah McKenzie, Duke Williams, Robert Foster, all 3 of those guys. If they cut them and nobody signs them, of course, I think they'll all land back on the practice squad. But it's just interesting, and also another little addition. So game day rosters have been increased from 53 to 55. So you have to carry a 53 active all year, but on game day, you have the ability to call up 2 additional players week to week off your practice squad. So if somebody's doing really good in camp or in practice, and you go to last year when they called up Duke Williams before the Tennessee game, well, they could do that this year without having to cut anybody. You have 2 spots you can do that for each week, and then you have to return. So you could call up 2 players. It could be any 2 players, and then you can return any 2 players. So if you call up Duke Williams and he has a great game and you don't want to put him back on the practice squad and chance him getting scooped up on that Monday by another team, you can keep him and send down Isaiah Hodgins, let's just say, you know what I mean? Or whatever that the roster looks like at that point. But you got to remember that you have to have a minimum of, I believe it's 8 offensive linemen. And if you don't have that, then one of the 2 call-ups has to be an offensive lineman. So I don't think the Bills will struggle with that. They kept 10 on their active roster all year last year, and I anticipate a minimum of 9 this year. I think that, if you just say, unless Feliciano goes on some type of injury list to start the season, but he's eyeing that Oakland game, or the Las Vegas Raiders game. So I think they probably carry him on the roster too.
Yeah. I mean, one question I really want to ask, it's probably the most important one for me, or probably one of the 2 the most important to me, obviously what happened recently, obviously with the kickers. Obviously Bass must have probably had an outstanding training camp for them to cut Hauschka, and also the fullback situation. I mean, obviously Gillam's actually really come and shone a little bit. Is there any inkling that DeMarco might be on the roster bubble?
So I'll do the kickers first. I think that Bass has been really good. He's had some misses. He missed a 55-yarder the other day. But his leg power is just unbelievable. And so I think what they did was they brought him to camp, kind of wanted to get a look at Steve Hauschka's, long ball, if you will, because that's an area that he struggled with the last few years, and last year especially. Sean McDermott couldn't even send him out there for a 54-yarder because they were worried about his leg strength. And, the one day he missed 3 straight 50-yarders, and then Thursday, I don't know if it was the final straw, but he missed an extra point. So I think that once they get an idea that, they loved Bass. They loved it. Farwell raved about him going back to the combine and his pro day. So I think that it was, hey, let's get him in the building. Let's give him a couple pressure kicks, see how he does. And he held up. And I think that Hauschka is a guy that, it was a tough call for them. They love the guy. I mean, he's a veteran presence. He's a leader. He's a guy that has made big kicks in big playoff games. But you just gotta, you got a tough decision to make. You draft a rookie, and not to mention, we mentioned the salary cap last year. The Bills are going to add close to $5 million to their cap over the next 2 years now with Hauschka off the books. So that's huge. That's huge as you try to kind of, earmark some money for some of these moves that you have to make. So in terms of Gilliam and DeMarco, the longer DeMarco stays out of practice, the more I wonder if they don't just put him on an injury list to start the year and give Reggie Gilliam basically a tryout. Like, okay, let's go here. Like, I think if you put him on active pup, DeMarco, he can return after 6 weeks. So you give 6 weeks to Gilliam and say, hey, this is your preseason, basically. Prove that you can make the team, and if that's the case, maybe then they move on from DeMarco, but kind of keep him as insurance in that case. So we'll see. I thought Gilliam's had a really good, strong camp. He had more opportunities early on. He had a really good block in the scrimmage on Thursday that led to a big Zach Moss run. But, it's tougher for a fullback to make a lot of noise unless they're making plays in the passing game, which he did early on. So, it's something to watch, and I think that it's good that you have some competition because I know that Bills fans have been eager to get to run Patrick DeMarco out of town. I know that there's this thing about fullbacks, man. I get it, especially when you want to keep all these receivers. But you got to remember, too, with the receiver thing, you can only have so many receivers in the field at one time. Like, people love Isaiah McKenzie. They love Robert Foster. They love Duke Williams. And I get it. But let's be honest here. Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, John Brown, they're going to get the lion's share of the work. I don't care if you keep Duke Williams or not. So there's just not the kind of snaps available to make those kind of guys, factors. And so I think you can get away with it. And, you just move on and you hope that they can maybe find some talent if another team scoops these guys up.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I like about Gilliam is actually the fact that he is that hybrid. He can actually come out and play a bit of tight end. And obviously, if he did get it over DeMarco, it's another little chess piece for the ball to actually either check what the what coverage the defense have, and maybe have obviously have that extra receiver. One that obviously no disrespect to DeMarco, one that actually had some obviously tight end experience out in that field as another weapon.
Yeah, I mean he looked really good on the catch that he made. AJ Klein was in coverage, but for sure, I think that for an offense that is proven to be open to throwing to the fullback, you definitely want one that has some pass catching ability, and I think Gilliam probably would be one of the better offensive weapons in the league at that position if he ends up making the team. So, yeah, great point.
Yeah. And the final question is, well, it's a two-parter. Who out, veteran, young player, rookie, anything like that, has stood out really at training camp? And is there any like big names or any names really you expect to be in the 53 that's on the roster bubble?
Well, first of all, somebody that's kind of surprised. I mean, obviously, I think Gabriel Davis has surprised just from the sense of how dynamic he's been and consistent he's been. But I think that, I'd probably want to mention Tyrell Dodson. I had pretty high expectations for him going in, but I think that he's been really solid, and I think he's made a really strong case to be that fifth or sixth linebacker, depending on how many they keep. He's played well. He can play multiple positions. He's smart. He's quick. I think Leslie Frazier, even on the call on Friday, said Dodson's greatest strength is his football IQ and how smart he is. So he's somebody that's done good. I think somebody that's got to be on the bubble is Trent Murphy, just because how much money they save if they get rid of him, and they've done so much to add on the defensive line. I mean, you got Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison, AJ Epinesa, who's first round level talent, and then you got Darrell Johnson and Mike Love, who's been really good. Had a explosive 2-sack performance on Thursday. So I think Trent Murphy, as much as they love him, maybe they rework his deal and figure out a way to keep him on the roster. I don't know, but $8 million is a lot of money in a year where they're going to be counting every penny.
Yeah,
you also mentioned Josh You also mentioned Josh Norman is someone who doesn't look too hot right now.
Yeah, he's been fine. Like, again, it's a tough environment to. I thought where he's looked the worst has been in the one-on-one drills, and those are really, one-on-one in an open field against an NFL receiver you're probably going to get embarrassed most of the time because they just have so much room to work with.
Yeah.
And I think even one play, Gabriel Davis, that one highlight, he beat Tre'Davious White down the field and made a catch in the end zone. So, you could say that, you could probably say something about Trey in that instance. But no, I think he's been fine. It's just the injuries is what's the problem. And we're not actually getting to see him in a game. And I think that Levi's been solid as usual. So I think that they go into this thing with Levi, depending on how quickly Josh can get back. I mean, we're now, today's Sunday, we're 2 weeks away from the opener. And so he's going to have to get hamstring injuries are tough for skill position players. So we'll see if he can get back. Maybe they slow play him, put him maybe on the active pup to start the year if he needs a little bit more time. And that might open up the door for a guy like Cam Lewis out of University of Buffalo, who's been really good all camp. Another guy that's got insane versatility, can play, in the slot, can play outside. And that's, something they said they liked about him coming out. So,
And the new practice squad rules actually really help this. So it's going to be, people are probably going to be upset that's probably their favourites have actually will be cut or on the bubble. As what you're saying earlier about the practice squad rules this season, it actually gives Bean and McDermott a little bit more of chess piecing going on.
It does and it doesn't. So, the one thing is, there's never going to be a time where your practice squad is fully protected. So, anybody could poach your practice squad at any given time. And, if you leave somebody, even if it's one of those 4 protected spots, they're not protected for a good 40 hours there after game days. So, I think that there's a misnomer out there that if you put a guy on the practice squad, one of them can be protected if they're one of those 4 guys. Well, that's not necessarily the case. I think it could still be, I don't think you could sit there and cut Trent Murphy or Josh Norman and put them on your practice squad and think they're not going to get poached. Although, with the feeling around the league on Josh Norman, who's to say that he can't do that? Because, I think that a lot of people think that his best days are behind him. So, a guy like that, I think you have a better chance at being able to do that. But I just want to make it clear that even though there are some provisions in there and some protections in there, it's not foolproof. There's going to be times during a week where you can take somebody and you can bring them in. And if a guy like a Duke Williams pops, even in training camp, let's look at the way that he's been written about all training camp again. He's been really good again because I've never seen a practice player that excels in practice the way that Duke Williams does. I mean, he's obviously had some good moments in games too, but he is an elite level player in practices. He makes plays that are just insane. He's made, in the last year that I've watched him play, he's made more insane catches in practice than probably the collection of other receivers I've seen combined. He's just a great practice player. So, but I just want to make that clear because I think that people read or hear about those protections and think that it's foolproof. It's not. They can definitely be poached though.
That's cool.
Well, let's hope no other team's GM is listening. I doubt they are, but still.
If
they do, we're doing something right.
Get those numbers up. You never know. And actually,
exactly,
a story that my guy Ryan put out recently on the site that Brandon said on Sirius Radio, they're using, Twitter and social media to monitor, teams' training camps. So who's to say that they don't come across the red, white, and blue pod and kind of get some deets.
We'll be happy not to tell them anything, but we'll be happy to tell Bean everything.
Yeah,
there you go.
But no, Matt, thank you very, very much for appearing on the show. Again, for people, you got a new podcast you and Ryan do, is it?
Yeah. If you want, we're going pretty hard right now during training camp because fans can't be there. So we decided to do daily reaction observations podcast. So every day, like today, we'll be out at the stadium, practice at 12:15. I'll write up my observations, head to my home where we have to do everything these days, and then we will do our reaction podcast and bring you everything a little bit more detail on what happened at the practices.
Yeah, and if people want to hear that, where do they find you on that one?
Yeah, it's search Shout Buffalo Bills podcast. Obviously, a play on the team's theme song, and I know that Buffalo Bills fans love that song whenever they hear it. And I actually hear it's in Madden this year. I saw that the Shout song is in Madden, which is pretty cool. But yeah, we're on all the platforms, Apple. And the cool thing about our podcast is it's a video podcast almost entirely. So every time, if you want to watch it live with us and participate with us, you can watch it on YouTube. Search NY Up. You could search Bills on NY Up on Facebook and watch it there, or on my Twitter account at Matt Parrino. And we go live every Wednesday night at 7:30 or 8 with our weekly, like, that's set in stone. And then we have a lot of our daily stuff that we do that's live as well.
Awesome. That's great. I think most of the fans will probably, especially in the UK, will be tuning into that a lot more to actually get as much training camp news as humanly possible.
Yeah, I mean, if they're night owls, that's like midnight our time.
But it's all good. And say, Matt, thank you very much for coming on. To say it's probably the third time I think you've been on, and every single time love chatting to you, getting to know a lot
great
more
insight.
about great insights and a lot more about the Bills. And obviously this year with training camp, it's been a really great interview. And we really thank you very much for coming on the show.
Anytime, guys. Love coming on with you guys. Fun conversation, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this camp, and hopefully your Bills can get you guys some wins this year.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So, Matt Parrino, thank you very much for coming on the Red, White, and Buffalo Blues.
All right, guys. Take care.
Cheers. Thank you. Thank you very much, Matt. That was great. We got a lot more questions that we wanted to ask. We were going to ask the quite easy questions, but Alex got his way this time.
Well, if you want, I can come back around after the 53 or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's I really feel all caught up now, so this is great. We can maybe do this again soon.
Cool.
Yeah,
all right, guys.
That's awesome. I'll let you get on then, Matt. Have a very good rest of the day.
Take care.
You too.
All right, bye.
And we thank Matt Parrino there for that interview. Great interview from a great guy that we love having on the show. So what I will say is actually that is the end of the show. I don't know about you, but I think that was actually really a really good interview. If you want more,
yeah. No, I mean, we covered everything that I wanted to talk about, so it was great. And right at the end there, we talked about having him on when we narrowed down the 53-man roster. So expect some good insight in the future as well coming through.
Exactly. So don't forget, subscribe to this podcast.
Please subscribe.
Podcast channels. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. I know Alex loves doing all the editing of all the videos, and
I really do. I love putting these things together. So let's have some comments on there. Please subscribe, hit that like button. Let's really build the UK Bills. We want to compete with the UK Falcons, the UK Chiefs. So let's really get integrated here. Let's all get together and build this thing.
So subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, all that. Go to YouTube, type in Buffalo Bills UK, and actually hit the subscribe button. Like us on Twitter at UK_Bills, and this podcast at RWBB_podcast. Follow us on Instagram at UK_Bills, and obviously join the Facebook group. Just search Buffalo Bills UK and request that join. And for me, that is Alex. And all we'll say now is good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for listening, and go Bills.
Go Bills.